controversial subjects with the facts can be tense, but we are ASAP Science here to make things make sense.
Okay, so a new survey found that 82% of people trying to quit porn failed.
Okay.
And then another study I found, since the pandemic, porn sites get more visitors than Amazon, Twitter, and Netflix combined.
Oh, I saw that too.
I was like,
so
what?
Pornhub is the 4th most visited site.
Yes, I saw that, but that's just Pornhub.
Yeah,
When
exactly.
they conglomerate all the porn sites, it beats Netflix, Twitter, and Amazon combined.
Yeah, that's wild. And so think of it this way. The most popular websites on the whole internet are Google, Facebook, YouTube, Pornhub.
Yeah.
Which I was like, it's not like so surprising, but that shocked me. One thing I want to say up the front of this episode, and we can talk a little more about the nuance.
Crazy.
Like, yes, there's conversations around porn addiction or porn use disorders. There is a lot of contention around the term addiction. Like, some scientists and research might be trying to find a connection to that, but like whether you would actually officially call it an addiction, because a lot of times addictions are associated with substances, things that your body relies on. But obviously in this technological age, even when it comes to social media, like the word addiction can be used kind of lightly. But so I think just know that when we might be saying the word addiction, that there is debate out there whether this should actually be classified as an addiction or like a use disorder.
But the debate is starting to get less debatey. Wow, that was like the worst way. Like the more recent research I'm reading, because they're really increasing the amount of research on this topic.
Sure.
Since I did my video, it's like it has changed in the way people talk about it.
Yeah, I'm not saying it couldn't be, but I just want to put that disclaimer out there that research is mixed and lots of experts have varying opinions on whether the term addiction is appropriate. Having said that, like they're often more casually, it will be called problematic pornography use in
PPU.
research. Yeah, PPU. And it's important to know that right now, as of the time of we're recording this, like the DSM or the IDC, which is the International Classification of Disease, they do not classify pornography addiction as a standalone diagnosis. So you're not going to go to a doctor or a professional and they're not going to classify you with porn addiction on its own.
But like I've done a bunch of research on this 4 years ago and then did a bunch leading up to this podcast, and there is a shift. Like they all start with that same thing, which is like, we're having a hard time saying if this is an addiction. Like they all start with that, but then now they're going into like physiological responses.
Beyond
where
whether
like,
we'll call it
whoa.
addicted or not, we can acknowledge there's a bunch of things this is doing to your mind, and like whether that be in your sex life, whether that be in your regular life, in your attention span, lots of studies, regardless of if we call it an addiction or not, can recognize that it has an impact on your life.
So one thing about erectile dysfunction that was so interesting was that in a study conducted in 1999, erectile dysfunction and low sexual desire rate was 5%. And then respectively by 2011, it had increased to 14 to 28%.
Wow. Whoa.
Yeah, and then in 2021, it was around 34%. So there's like this stark increase in erectile dysfunction. And then this article was like, they genuinely think it has to do with pornography use, which I thought was so interesting. Like, I never would have thought that. I would have thought it was like plastics or like obviously gone to something more.
I mean, there might be other elements of society being like generally more stressed, generally less like more financially strained.
But they had a good argument
that
of
is
like the amount of ways that we consume porn in those time frames has
like,
changed.
Even like soft, maybe you wouldn't classify it as porn, but you seeing Instagram algorithms and showing you bodies, and like,
I know,
even if you're not like using it to be aroused, it may change your expectations or your desires to be linked to specific visuals that maybe it makes it harder to when you're then in the bedroom, whether alone or with somebody else, you're not getting that same feedback.
I have like a story that's like, I cannot name names because it's actually like, and I realized I like kind of blocked it.
It's you.
No, but I was like, I go to a lot of like art openings now. Like I'm in like my master's doing art. So I have to like meet these people. And I met this person who I like really respect.
Okay.
He's like a famous artist. And he was asking about ASAP Science and was like, oh wait, like I'm so bad. Like, can you just type in your Instagram to my thing? So he like opened up his Instagram so that I could type it in like the homepage, and it was just like all like girls like titties bouncing, like the homepage algorithm.
That's probably not even their fault.
No, and it was just like I'm like, mine's the equivalent, but like
of like men,
like Brazilian men in like Speedos, but like it's crazy, like because I kind of was like, oh, that's a gay guy thing, like because gay guys are psycho, but this was just like a very average like man.
I really
was
want
like,
people listening and watching. I want our straight listeners listeners to send us like a snapshot, because you're right, I only see my gay friends version of this. All of our like Instagram, when you hit the search button, it's just like a bunch of shirtless men. Or you maybe
it's not everyone. Okay.
No, I
like,
know, but I'd be curious to see like. It haven't occurred to me that it's just on someone else's, like a bunch of girls in bikinis. I know.
Well,
it's so stupid.
no, it was like literally she was like jumping up and down like and her tits were, and I was like typing it in and I could see in his face like as he was looking at it. I was just like, oh my God, I'm like, you don't have to be ashamed, but like this is crazy. Like that we are living in a world where
just casually you see that when you're not even looking for it.
And I was like, maybe he's a horn dog, like,
but maybe not. I don't like think
sometimes like some people, like I've talked about this before, and like I know like some people will be like, oh, mine's actually just all like sculpture videos because they're like a sculptor, and I'm like, you are so cool and innocent.
Yeah,
because it's
mine's just hot guys and puppies,
and that's like very you. Mine's like Rosalia, Bad Bunny, and then like dicks.
I think though, like I know we're on a side note. Well, we'll get to pornography addiction.
No, it's linked.
Yeah, because I think it for a long time mine wasn't like that. But of course, every now and then it's like, oh, it knows I'm a gay guy. It knows a lot of my friends are gay guys on Instagram. Then it shows me like a hot man. Of course, sometimes I click on that, and now it's like, of course, now my whole algorithm is that.
I know, like whenever I see like the hot man, I'm like, wow, wait, do I know him? It's like, no, you don't know him.
I'm like, is he giving some really interesting,
I'm like, oh, is he
intellectual advice?
Yeah, is he wanting to be my friend? No, he doesn't know me.
Anyway,
okay, so this is why the hell that happens. I'm going to go into the like neurophysiology of why these companies honestly have fucked us. Okay. It is so basic, but it truly is so linked to dopamine. And I know we've talked about dopamine so much, but I think it's just something that we need to always reiterate. It is honestly a huge part of all of our world's issues. I genuinely think we're just like the dopamine nation.
Right.
Read the book. Okay, so what's so important to know about dopamine is that it is what is involved with the craving of something. Like the actual experience of like sex or orgasm, like that's a lot of like serotonin and all these other hormones that are great. But once you're having sex, like that's actually not the issue they're seeing with people who have compulsive porn addictions, or again, issue with that word, but problematic porn use. It's all about that like wanting it and the actual experience of watching it and like having an orgasm. In many cases, they're experiencing less pleasure than people who don't have it.
Right.
Like it's so interesting. It's the dopamine. It's the
Yeah, I mean, a lot of studies, and we've talked about this on the pod before, but even in like mice and stuff, they can see, and in humans, like dopamine often spikes like as an anticipation to getting that reward.
Exactly.
Especially, obviously, the first time you ever try something, you may not have that. The dopamine comes from the reward, but then they realize the more associated you have with it, it's like your excitement leading up to having it is like then what's driving you is like that anticipation of getting it, that dopamine spike right before you eat your ice cream or have sex or watch porn, you know,
or like get a like
or
on
get a
Instagram.
like. Yeah.
But this is why it's like so important for our time. So the mesolimbic dopamine activation, it's a common neurochemical mediator of motivation, desire, and wanting/craving for all motivational systems, which is like very important for animals and humans in order to like survive in the past. It's like you need to be motivated in order to like work for these things. But now we don't work for them. It's like porn is everywhere. It's just like on our phones. And so that's why it's an issue. And so essentially it's like well established that viewing pornography increases brain activity among regular users, especially in the ventral striatum, which is crucial for anticipating rewards. So you watch porn and you maybe watch porn compulsively or watch it a lot, and you physically change your brain because of neuroplasticity. It's same with social media. It's same with any sort of like, I don't know if people can hear that. That's not me like ripping a fart. Yeah, like these, like it's like it's not your fault. Like that's what I sometimes am thinking. Like it's people are. We'll get to the shame later, but it's like
brains are always changing. Like of course we're probably talking about it in a negative way here, but your brain is plastic. If you start practicing piano or Spanish, you're changing
or has plasticity.
What did I say?
Plastic.
Well, you're sorry.
Yeah.
People do describe it that way.
Yeah. I guess it's like.
But
sorry.
Okay,
the way you said it, I was like,
is not plastic.
There's microplastics in it, but yeah.
But you know what I mean. Like any activity you suddenly start indulging in lots is going to change the way that your brain fires and works and makes it more efficient in that way. So of course, if you're doing it with a behavior that can ultimately become a negative behavior, that it's not just the change that's inherently bad, but it's like the way that it's changing that can make it difficult to unravel.
Okay, so dopamine, it makes you crave things like food. So there's some arguments about how like maybe a lot of people have issues around food now because truly our food is wild. Like we get
So
like
accessible,
fat and salt and sugar, like potentially all in one. That's like my favorite food. I like
And
sweet and salty at the same time.
You really can have access to it at any time of year. Even speaking of like healthy fruits and stuff, it's like food that would never be accessible to someone who lives where we live is accessible all year round.
Yeah.
Like I can have the juiciest, nicest mango like at any time of year.
So dopamine
let
is
alone
like released
dessert.
in anticipation of that. Also love and friendship. So that's sometimes the social media piece. Like you got dopamine when like your friend has left you a message because it's like a sign of like feeling this sort of feelings you get from
like
friendship, but
connection
like
and-
through your fucking phone. But porn, it's the reason there's such an intense relation to dopamine is because dopamine's also related to craving novelty and sex. And porn, like the definition of it is like novel sexual stimuli, like given to you. So like I was like, there's something so interesting there about the novelty of porn. It's like before there was the static image and like a Playboy or a Playgirl if you're gay like me. And it's like, okay, like it's, you flip the page and it's like tits and like a vag and like they're not moving and it's like a cock and it's like, okay, but like you're actually like, ooh, the novelty is like now she has brown hair. Now he has black hair. Like it's like, the novelty of porn now is wild. And the idea of how people watch it, like Twitter, like scrolling Twitter for porn. Like when I talk to a lot of my friends about porn, they use Twitter or like some sort of app where it's like,
It is just a matter of scrolling.
I'm literally like tabs
longer
of
searching.
like porn on your computer browser is like reading a novel now compared to like the way, that
it's
people
more like a TikTok
scroll.
guy. It's like,
yeah.
it's like you don't have to search or do anything. It's just like there as a channel for you.
So then what happens is while picture the tabs or you're scrolling Twitter, the dopamine levels baseline in your brain, like in that like specific ventral striatum, stay high for long periods of time. So you're essentially just like constantly looking, overstimulating the anticipation of
like the
sexual
is.
reward, which in this case would be like an orgasm or even, you know what I mean? I'm like, that's crazy. You're actually doing the novelty porn thing to your brain. The dopamine is firing at such a high level before you actually commit to like.
Yes, and part of that novelty experience is like anticipating finding the perfect thing that is like exactly what you want in that moment. You know what I mean? Like if you're watching pornography, obviously you come across stuff where you're like, oh, like that's not, I don't want to like finish with this.
It's like so funny to talk to like people about that, being like, so when do you decide when? And it is true. You're like doing
which
this math.
clip are you gonna do?
Yeah. It's like obviously it's not math. Sorry, mathematicians. It's like the opposite of math. But you're affecting your brain when you're doing something that might seem like a funny kind of like innocuous, like waiting for the right porn.
And then you might end up consuming way more than you meant to because you're not coming across that like perfect thing that will like match up with your expectation of having that sudden rush of that. I didn't know what I wanted, but this is it, you know?
So that idea of this dopamine baseline being so high, it's like, it is a technologically advanced issue. Like, this is what I'm going back to. Like, it's not your fault. Like, porn,
we're in a society.
Porn consumption is on the rise. The studies are wild. And I'm like, this is a matter of the actual semiotic way that we're getting porn. It's like, the reason it's going up so much is because that's happening to people.
Yeah, and beyond it being like like there's always been video, but it's like it is just so accessible now, right? Like you can, with literally, as you were saying before, without meaning to, by going on someone's Instagram to just put in their name and add them, you come across an image that could stimulate you.
Yeah.
Now suddenly, not only have you seen something without choosing to, you might be more inclined to go watch porn because it's like triggered your brain to be like, oh my gosh, I'm in like a sexually aroused state now.
Like thirst traps. It's like there's like these words that we now sort of like have created for being like, yeah, of course you're on Instagram, you're gonna try and like sexualize your life. Like it's like I'm not trying to be like Mr. like conservative Christian. It's like
No, and I have a really
And I
interesting
have an
study
interesting
later.
on that
Like
too, yeah.
we're not. I don't think it's fair to say like, oh, porn is just this blanket bad thing.
No.
But obviously, when it comes to like use disorders, and there are people out there who might be watching this even or listening to this who know like, okay, I think I do have like I rely on it too heavily.
And I think a lot of people can be like, again, it's not your fault. Like, there's a reason why people might be like this. I'm resonating with this now, and it's not like it's like Bad Bunny's Calvin Klein ad. Of course, I have to bring that up.
was
But
your
it's
point.
like, well, I'm just like, oh my god, like I was like, I watched. Like I was like,
Like, of
I
course, this
was,
is
I
Greg's
can't even
porn.
talk. I'm like overwhelmed. But like, it's like, that is what we expect from culture now. It's like, it's like, it was Shawn Mendes's last year, or like, it's not odd for like someone to just like have the hottest ad on Instagram be maybe the most like commented, like people are, what I'm trying to say is like the culture of it isn't like, what the fuck? Like they're, it's good. We don't want to like slut shame and do all these things that we've done in the past, but it's interesting that it's like Bad Bunny's doing a Calvin Klein ad. Like, let's go. And like, I am going to be horny and like the girls are going to be wet. Like, it's like this, but it's on Instagram. Like it's dopamine. It's like this anticipation of this like sexual thing is so linked to our phones.
Yeah. I think I want to say that, and I know we're already saying this, but it's like, I don't think porn is inherently the problem, right? And I think what an episode, like we're trying to do this episode, it's like taking a drug. It's like, you know, smoking marijuana or eating edibles. Like it can be fun. It can be interesting part of your life. It can also go too far and be bad. And
I don't know. I kind of like, my thing is I'm like, I'm like, I think porn is
bad.
actually a huge problem.
But it's obviously this like intrinsic part of human nature now. If the fourth biggest website in the world is a porn website.
But I think that is because of the way that it has been designed, that I think it's like, I don't know.
Okay.
And maybe
Well,
I am
we
being
disagree
like,
then.
maybe I'm being like a nun, but I'm like, there's something about its access to people that is like easier to access.
Of
than
course, but then that's
anything
what
else.
education is for.
Yeah, okay.
There's a way to have lots of people casually watch porn from time to time and it's not ruining their lives. There are lots of people who are probably using it too much and it's probably affecting their sex lives and their regular lives.
You're
but
right.
there's probably many, many people on this planet who have actually a pretty healthy relationship to porn, might use it sometimes, but don't feel like they need to rely on it. I think that would be a totally okay thing.
Okay,
So
yeah.
that's why I don't think it's black or white.
Well, I thought it was okay. Here's one thing: it was like frequent viewers of sexually explicit material and people with problematic porn use were more likely to have a liberal or positive attitudes towards porn and believe that using it could create a more stimulating sex life. So I'm just saying, like, there's something interesting too that like when
it depends on
when you're super like, no, there's no such thing as like bad. You know what I mean? Like maybe you're thinking you're really sex positive can sometimes lead people to consuming more porn. But then I also have a lot of stuff about how feeling guilty and bad about it makes it worse.
Exactly.
So it's like, okay, yeah.
Do you
yeah,
want to
yeah.
jump into that now? I just wanted to say a few more things about the brain and body. And then
Yeah, me
would
too. I
like
want to say more. It's crazy.
Okay.
Let's just keep, yeah.
So a study came out recently, speaking of dopamine, and like activating parts of your brain that are related to like, you know, reward and all this. They found that pornography activates these regions more intensely than things like money or gaming, which was really interesting.
Which makes sense, I guess.
Yeah, but you'd think like something
titties
like money.
bouncing,
Yeah,
like
it's just
dicks
it's good to know. Like it's a
bouncing.
very strong reward center when you're
Yeah.
like stimulating it
Yeah,
with
yeah,
pornography, and it literally is changing the areas of your brain. It's both the structure and function.
Totally.
Areas related to reward processing, to decision making, to emotional regulation. So often they find like this association, for example, of people, the more you watch porn or the more you are close to that use disorder, the more likely you are to struggle like making short-term versus long-term gain decisions, like being not indecisive. What's the word?
Impulsive. This is
yes.
why I'm scared, because I'm like, I'm so impulsive, and I think of it as a good thing. Like, I'm like, I can make decisions quickly and all these things. I'm like, wait, what if it's related to like my freaking phone and like
The need
porn
to
and
just
like
be satisfied
cocks bouncing
immediately
on my Instagram?
And so obviously
like,
that's an association. No one's trying. We don't know for sure like which causes which.
but it is interesting. Like,
Yes.
we live in a give me what I want now world through our phones.
Yeah, and I think it's important to acknowledge like most people probably think, okay, porn's bad when it, takes over somebody's life, but it's also bad if it affects their sex life in a negative way. It's also bad, but it's like, this is a way that's almost completely unrelated, seemingly, to porn, that it can affect your life in a negative way.
Wait, what's the
your
way, though?
impulsivity?
Yeah, okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Like that can affect many other parts of your life,
Yeah.
in your business, in your family life, your relationships, that ability to not to choose short-term gains over long-term gains.
Yeah. Interesting.
You wouldn't think and again, it's an association. We're not saying porn causes
It's a strong, there's a lot, that's what a lot of this is about. It's like, if you're scrolling Twitter looking at porn, it can affect your ability to be more impulsive in your brain, which I find so interesting. And then also when it comes to dopamine, quote unquote addiction, you'll hear it on all the podcasts. Huberman, it's pretty much how he made his millions. There is a sense of increased impulsivity and increased boredom in our lives. Our lives are at home more. They're on our phones more. People are thinking that boredom is an important thing to feel, and we are in living boring lives, but with our phones, we don't have to feel boredom. So it's our lives have become more repetitive and boring, but actually not, because of our phones, we don't feel that boredom. And so boredom and loneliness are essential factors for increased porn use, because you're trying to just mitigate the boredom of your life through your phone. And I just thought that was interesting. It's our lives are not going to work. Working from home is a boring environment that will then lead you to not want to feel that boredom through porn or something.
It's way easier to turn to porn versus if you're in an office, you're more likely to be I'll go on social media, which who's saying that's better or worse, but it's you at work probably aren't going on porn, or if you are, you probably are self-aware that that's a pretty intense thing.
Intensely to do. And now, because people there's such an increase in porn use post. I know, Mitch, I just have to be able to see it. It's not a big deal, but there's a bit of a laptop in our shot.
I'm thinking of the thumbnail right now, and I don't want your laptop in it.
Well, I can move it over and do a big cock. Porn use. The idea that porn use has increased so much since the pandemic, I'm that's so interesting, because people are at home, and that's a big part of it. And then also, to talk about problematic porn use, I think it's good to sort of give the idea of the symptoms, which people talk a lot. How would you know?
Yeah.
So one thing was called preoccupation. It's when you're preferring to spend time maybe going and looking for porn than
Can we pause
time
for a
with
second?
others? Yeah.
I want to finish the things that happen to your body. I have a couple more before we go, and how do you know?
Yeah.
I'll just kind of spitfire them. So it leads to emotional problems with emotional regulation.
Yeah.
If people who are exposed to porn younger have long-term effects on their sexual development and behavior, increased risk of developing compulsive use patterns. And a study in China found that porn use was associated with changes in reproductive hormone levels and semen quality.
Wow.
So it's is affecting your body beyond just potentially that addictive behavior to use it.
Yeah, this is another study that is a new one. These are all fascinating to me. We got to make another video. There's so much information coming in now, but there's a strong drop in libido over people who have watched more pornography in the previous 6 months. So this was actually a study on people who felt like they were suffering from lower libido, and then interviewing them about their porn use. And it was a strong correlation between increased porn use, decreased libido. And a study in 2015 on high school students discovered a correlation between frequent porn consumption and poor sexual desire. So I was that's really interesting. As we get into now, how to tell if you're struggling with problematic porn use, if you feel like you're maybe not having as much sex with your partner, or actually that's probably the easiest way to say it, sex with your partner. Someone who
there's other ways that you could say this is negatively affecting my life. I can't concentrate at work. I'm just thinking of going to watch porn instead.
So this was one. Symptoms include repetitive sexual activities becoming the central focus of a person's life, potentially neglecting health and personal care for themselves or other interests. So it was sort of this one was more about people who had sex addiction or compulsive sexual disorder. They don't call it sex addiction. They might be risking their health with how much sex they're having. You can get STIs, things like that. If numerous unsuccessful efforts to significantly reduce the repetitive sexual behavior of porn or masturbating, and they said 6 months or more. If you've ever sort of tried to do something in like a 6-month period and not been able to do it, that was like one
like a sign. If you've tried to stop or minimize and you're not able to, you
yeah,
mean over
like
that
continued repetitive sexual behavior despite adverse consequences, or trying to stop, the failure of control, and then impairment with family, social, educational, occupational, like all these things is like if you start to feel like that is something resonating with you, then it's like you could be dealing with this, which is like I think really important to know about. Distress that is entirely related to moral judgments and disapproval about sexual impulses, urges, and then it can lead to this level of shame and guilt that we'll talk about a bit more later because it's quite interesting.
Yeah, based on surveys, it's like around this is in the States, America, the United States of America. Around 7% of people self-identify as having like porn addictions. But that doesn't mean like you may not feel that you're addicted, but maybe you still like in our last weed episode, you might be like, I would rather like have a little
Like more control.
Yeah, or like I'd like to cut back and only do it X amount of times, but I feel like sometimes I just impulsively use it. So I think it's just important to like evaluate where you are, but obviously if it's like a serious problem, that's something you have to talk to a professional.
Yeah, I wrote here Samantha vibes from Sex and the City because there's that in one study, the high frequency non-problematic group comprised 19% to 29% of the users and may represent those with high sexual desire whose sexual behaviors align with their needs and do not cause adverse harm or consequences to their lives. So that sounds complicated because it's from a bigger study, but what it meant was that when they looked at how much porn people were watching and how people were self-identifying as having problematic porn use or not, there was a cohort of people who were watching the most porn who didn't feel like that. They were like, I have high sexual urges. It does not affect my life. And I wrote Samantha vibes. You know what I mean? Like she is clearly living her life looking and thinking about sex all the time, but she has that sort of confidence and she's not like hiding it and it's not inhibiting her life. Whereas there was a lot of other groups in there who were like feeling the negative impacts
less or consuming less, but felt negative about it.
Yeah. And one was actually the least consumers also felt like they had problematic porn use because they're trying so hard to cut back because they're really worried about the way it impacts them.
I want to first say, obviously, I think if you use a lot and you think your life is great and healthy, then whatever.
Yeah, that's fine.
But
yeah,
I mean, obviously, self-reflect. Like,
yeah.
It's easy to delude yourself with drugs, alcohol, sex, all these things. Like, obviously, it's hard to evaluate yourself. And because pornography is so secret, like it would be easy to hide it compared to some other issues in people's lives. It's hard to have somebody else know and say, I think you need help. So, but obviously there's a level of like, if people around you aren't being negatively affected and you feel like you have a healthy relationship, even if it's more than the average, like power to you. What I wanted to bring up was a really interesting study, and I'm sure maybe you came across it as well, that really mostly found that being religious was the biggest factor of porn shame and actually brought on most of the negative effect versus, like you said, it wasn't the amount. They found people who were religious and had beliefs that porn was bad, even if they were consuming less, experienced the most negative impacts in their life.
Yeah.
Which I thought was like a really interesting perspective to say it's maybe it's not just how much you consume, it's your belief about what consuming it means.
Okay, so this was so interesting. So this was about compulsive sexual behavior, which when you have compulsive sexual behavior, one of the most obvious quote unquote symptoms or whatever is that you watch a lot of porn. Okay. So like, but this is again not talking about porn use specifically, but people who have compulsive sexual behavior. And they found that the guilt that would come around trying to like abstain would have a really weird effect on their dopamine reward levels because they're trying so hard. It says it augmented their dopamine response because when you're trying to not think about sex or you have guilt around it, you end up thinking about it more.
Right. As you're using willpower, but it's still directed towards this concept of sex and
it creates a high arousal state in your brain. And it's like they were just explaining how guilt doesn't help people actually have a responsible relationship with sex or porn.
Right. Because it's not a useful emotion that helps you deal with it in a positive way.
Yes. So it's like the guilt, although it has a form of frontal lobe mediated inhibition, like you would think like, okay, it's like guilt would maybe stop you.
Yeah.
It actually like in a backwards way makes the dopamine levels like fire higher as you're constantly thinking about how you don't want it and you shouldn't do it. And I was like, that's so interesting. And then there's this crazy graph that I'm obsessed with. I thought it's really complicated, but it's talking about how like your dopamine release like and your reward strength, like as like the X and Y axis, there's sort of like this bell curve. Like
I'm trying to not look at the graph so I can understand it.
no, it's real. It's honestly so complicated. I was like, you know, when you read science things. Okay, so the gist of it are 3 words: liking, wanting, and needing. So liking porn is like you're in good territory. Right. Wanting porn is when you start to get to like issues, or it's actually like the issues are already there, and needing it is like a severe addiction. So that's the easiest way that it's explained. Do you like porn? Do you want porn? And do you need porn? Okay, that's like great. But what's so interesting is that this graph shows you like if you have low dopamine release and you're not even like liking and there's not even a reward for porn, like that could be, you know, potentially you have like an issue with hormones or something, or even your dopamine levels. Like it's not necessarily like a good thing. This sort of the like benchmark place is where, you know, there's a dopamine release, like you're wanting and liking porn, and there's also a high reward for it. Like you're feeling good, it's fun, and it's like a part of your life. Yeah. And then it tips over into this place where like you're thinking about it a lot, you're wanting it, and then maybe even needing it, and the dopamine like release ends up, it's like there's really low amounts of dopamine release that still make you need it. Yeah. Like you kind of want
probably not enjoy it in the same way.
Yeah, before. And in fact, you enjoy it a lot less.
And so you probably just compulsively do it to get a bit of that kick.
And that's where it gets to it's like you need it to just be baseline, which I thought was interesting. Some other reasons.
I think like intuitively a lot of this makes sense where you're like,
it does.
You're getting this thing that you want all the time. I can see in other spaces of my life, like it's good to have space away from things that you desire and feel good. And like it is good to feel like you earn something versus just being able to like overconsume something that feels good.
Totally, yeah. So, and it can be an emotional coping mechanism with social isolation, a huge issue with now, loneliness, a huge issue with now, stress, escaping negative thoughts. This one freaked me out. It was like, and a lot of people will use it due to a fear of death. Oh, and I was like, whoa, like it's just literally turning your brain off because it's like
that's what I think
primal.
It reminds me of social media and phone use. Like obviously they're very different things, but that same idea of like often when you go to veg on social media or your phone, you're like managing an emotional state. You don't want to feel too much right now. You just want to feel happy. You just want to like veg out. You're using the phone to manage that state.
And it's also dopamine. It's like, is the next video going to be funny? Yeah. It's anticipating the reward of like something funny or entertaining or a tit.
But I think it is important to realize and recognize. And I think a lot of the treatment, if it's a serious problem, is around like CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, and recognizing those moments of like, okay, I am anxious. That's why I just got anxious and I want to go use porn or I want to go use social media. How do I like get in between then and figure out strategies around that, which will be personalized?
And also like the video we did about quitting porn, that's the video from 4 years ago, was interesting. Like there's a part where, after 2 days you might feel anxiety. Like depending on how much porn you're watching, like you might need it to sleep. You might there might be parts of it that you rely on and you have trouble sleeping. You have increased anxiety. You want to watch porn. And then sometimes the studies about being like, but I shouldn't because I promised myself I'd quit leads to the guilt, which then makes you think about it more. But it did say like after 30 days to like a month and a half is when there could be some gray matter changes in your brain to become easier. So it's like, again, like these things seem overwhelming, but like with behavioral therapy, with just maybe trying to change your lifestyle, self-awareness, like you can get to a place where these things can become easier for you.
Yeah, and if you watched or listened to our last episode,
I think it was 2 ago,
about weed addiction, like that's been my perspective as well, is like it can be a lot to say that you're just going to stop something, right?
Yeah,
Even if you think, like, for example, I don't think like marijuana is bad, and I also don't think porn is like, I don't think these things are just evil and we have to stop them. So it's maybe a better response if you feel like you have a bad relationship to it to say, what if I say I'm allowed to watch it X amount of times a week or only on the weekends to like mitigate that decision is made for you, and it's a step in like minimizing that. You're still allowed to have it, so you don't have to have that anxiety of like, I'm never gonna get this again, but allows you to build like a structure around slowly quitting it.
And if you break it, like to not feel so guilty.
Yeah, yes.
Maybe,
I
like,
mean, obviously
somehow.
working with a therapist,
Yeah.
like a lot of like addictions, people have a hard time staying with it. That's like a really hard thing to do. I just want to bring up like the moral incongruence one more time. So that like, yes, I said religion, but ultimately, and because a
Like
lot
feeling
of
like it's bad
people who
or-
are raised religious are told like porn is bad
Yeah.
and sex outside of marriage is bad. Like these things that are like hard, but obviously you don't have to be religious. So people who have this moral incongruence, you're consuming porn even though you know or you think it's bad, have higher levels of stress, anxiety, depression, diminished sexual well-being, as well as religious and spiritual struggles. So again, if you're someone who's like, I don't think this is a problem for me, then maybe it's not. It is interesting to know it's not just about the amount that's going to like cause the negative impact on your life. You more than anyone, if you really self-reflect, will be able to tell, like, is this bad for me or is this good for me? And I think, yeah, only you can be honest to yourself. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you don't have to talk to anyone about this. Porn's just so funny because you're right. Like most people just do it alone. They were saying a lot of like good ways to use porn is to do it with your partner, watch it with your partner. Like that can be helpful.
Exactly.
But also it's just like, for me, what freaks me out is just like, one thing I was learning about boredom and impulsivity is that you have to try and do the tasks around you that are boring to help yourself with all of our addiction to dopamine
you gotta
is
get used
do
to that
boring
feeling.
things.
Yeah.
And I was just like, I'm so not do boring. I'm like the opposite of doing boring things. It like freaked me out, honestly. And I'm like, I
But if
need
it's
to do
that-
more boring things.
Fair, but if it's that hard, I would say if you're like trying to replace porn, the first step probably isn't just do nothing.
No,
It's
I'm not talking
probably
about replacing porn. I'm talking about the general thought of like my
Needing-
life
yeah.
being like, okay, I'm thankfully
stimulating
in
at all
school.
moments. Yeah.
So that's helpful because it's stimulating in this really beautiful way. And I recommend, if you can, everyone goes back to school. But I'm sort of talking about, and I think everyone can relate to this, we are just truly able to go on our phones and get rid of our boredom so quickly. And I think especially am interested in novelty. Like it made me think about my weed addiction too. Like I love new things, and I always thought this was like a good thing in my life. It's like I'm really impulsive when it comes to making decisions, which is helpful. Like sometimes you struggle with decisions. It's like I was always like, that's a good thing. It's like, no, impulsivity around decisions could also be a product of like my phone and like all these other aspects of dopamine in my life, that it's like, no, maybe chill the F out a little bit and think about this decision. It's not just a good thing that I can make really impulsive decisions that I do think benefit my life. It's like the classic thing where you're like, sometimes you need to be told, whoa, that thing I thought was so good is like obviously can be an issue too. Like, yeah. And so I just think for me, I'm like, if I'm leaning into doing boring things, I think that's a good thing for my life, which will, for anyone talking about problematic porn use, help with that. It's like, if you can do boring things, you're going to slow down and change the part of your brain that is related to dopamine addiction, which I just
It's
was like
baby
that's
steps
interesting.
towards that, I
Yeah.
think. Like if you throw yourself off the deep end, you're going to fail. So it is like, how do you create a structure around it to like let yourself experience boredom for incremental amounts of time.
Yeah.
So your body gets used to it, you know how to process it, but don't overwhelm your system with anxiety so that you just immediately
But like
go to a
doing the
coping
dishes
mechanism.
could help in like this really weird backward scientific way. Like it's really interesting. And like in the weed episode, we were talking like, oh, we like to get high so we can do the dishes and it's less boring. Like that's what I was thinking. Oh, my weed addiction's linked. Like I like doing remedial tasks stoned because then I can listen to a song and
then
love
make
it. But it's
it
like,
more
but that's
enjoyable.
impacting all
Yes, the need
of
to
these
always
regions of my
feel
brain. Yeah.
stimulated.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's like if I can think that the being stoned and washing the dishes is linked to my compulsive phone use, I think I can do the dishes not stoned if I'm like, okay, because the one
has a
thing in my
function,
life I
yeah.
hate is my compulsive phone use. So anything I can think of to mitigate that, including doing boring things, will be easier for me to do, knowing that it might be helping my brain.
Totally.
It's crazy out there though. Like there's so many new studies on this porn stuff. I find it fascinating because I think
Yeah, we really are surrounded by it at every second. Like
Yeah.
this soft core version of things. But
and it's so linked to our phones and to our dopamine and to these,
stepping into like obviously natural desires and then not exploiting is like an intense word, but obviously it's like exploiting.
No, it's
that,
exploiting. It's exploitation from honestly like techno-fascists. Like that's the other part. It's like who is on the receiving end of all of this? It's like Mark Zuckerberg. It's like he is the person who has designed like this is why it's not your fault. Like the porn industry is an outpost of the social media industry. It's an outpost of Instagram. Like it's all linked and it's all fucking up our brains. And so we have to figure out ways to mitigate it and talk about it and talk openly about our porn use so that we can actually have like a fighting chance. Yeah. It's crazy.
Feel comfortable because so many people do have shame about it. It is like just talking about the use is important, I think, to de-shame so that people can then have a healthy relationship.
Yeah. And it is crazy, but like it is linked to the climate crisis. It's linked to everything, like our phones and the distraction that it can give us and our lack of boredom and our lack of ability to like read nuanced papers. You know what I mean? Like it's all linked. Like, and there's just these evil people who are showing themselves to us that they're evil, like American billionaires who run these companies who take advantage of our dopamine centers. So like, I just think like, sometimes that can help too, being like, it's not your fault. It's literally Mark Zuckerberg's fault. Blame him because like he's the worst. And then it's like helpful to be like, okay, no, I want to be against him.
Yeah.
I don't want to like succumb to that.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Cool.
Anyways.
Well, I think there's a lot there. Obviously, it's like this is so deep and so integrated into society. And there's so much research on it.
Oh my God. ASAPscience.com/chat too, if you have something to talk about. Like, I feel like this might be sparking people's like
it
interest.
would be cool to chat, hear people's perspective on this. We could maybe do a follow-up episode that is hearing people's like I keep having this idea. I want to do like follow-up episodes with voice notes from people.
Totally.
If there's enough interest, like we could, it would just be interesting to hear people's perspectives and talk about it more casually.
And I want to do a new ASAP Science episode on this.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. ASAPscience.com/chat. Our next episode actually will be a call-in episode, but leave us one and we'll do them on a future one. And
we'll take a little break and then we're going to come back for What'd You Learn This Week.
Peace.